Welcome to Back from the Abyss. I'm Dr. Craig Heacock. This is a place for stories of hope and healing, recovery and redemption. Today I'm doing a solo episode. I did the same one last year. It's called What I'm Thinking About Now. I was on a long trail run with my besties a few months ago when a most interesting question arose. It was, what makes you tear up? What makes you cry? Like many of our long-run chats, this one went really deep with lots of pondering and dialogue and eventually some really cool vulnerability from each of us. My realization was that I most commonly tear up when I come rocketing into the present moment, the here and now. And I suddenly become aware of something beautiful or profound, something unfolding from moment to moment, from breath to breath. It was the time that my friend Jordan stopped in the middle of a sleet storm while we were running the Teton Crest Trail. He looked all around us and he said, I don't want this amazing moment to end. Or it was sitting quietly, deeply listening to my oldest daughter sing a heartbreakingly beautiful song at a competition when she was in high school. It happens to me a lot, these spontaneous and unexpected tears. And then the very most recent time was at an astounding play in Chicago last month called Primary Trust, when during the final monologue, the lead character, he looked out at the audience and he said, quote, all of this, all that you've seen here, in 15 years it's all going to be condos, but for now, and here he slowed his breath, calmed, spread his arms wide. A broad, grateful, tearful smile stretched across his face, and he said, but for now, this. Of all the times and places I tear up, I think it happens at work the most. And for me, that's a clear sign that I am doing the work, that I'm spending some time working in the present moment, in the here and now. For good therapy necessarily involves at least two very different tasks. The first, which we call holding, asks the therapist to sit in the pain with the patient, to be that affirming, loving, patient, non-judgmental, ideal parent who requires nothing at all from the patient themselves, but can sit with the patient in the suffering for as long as it takes, not telling the patient what to do, not trying to fix anything or cheer the patient up, or change the topic to something less painful. Holding involves stepping into that idealized parent role and pouring the love and the patience downhill. Holding typically involves emotions and stories that the patient has brought into the room from somewhere else, from another time, another place. Yet that is only part of the story. Therapy that only holds, therapy that only focuses on the patient's stories, that's like life in two dimensions. It's life viewed on a screen. It can be engaging and useful for sure, but therapy that dares to enter the third dimension, that of the energetic void between, the living, crackling, scary, wondrous space between me and the patient, that's where things get really interesting. I was teaching about working in the here and now at my recent psychotherapy training here in Fort Collins, and one of the participants said that she now knows that her therapist has only ever held her, that they haven't ever actually moved into the present moment in their work together. I think this is probably true for a very significant percentage of therapy as it's practiced today. We therapists know that we should listen attentively, we should ask questions, ask about thoughts and emotions, but so many of us are ignoring the third dimension, the magic space of therapy. Inviting patients to come into the room to look at the space between, this lights therapy on fire. Is there trust here between us? How are we feeling about what's happening in this room? What are we not saying to each other? What are you thinking as you drive to the session? What are you most hoping that we don't talk about? And then, as you're going to drive away, what do you think you'll most regret that you didn't have the courage or wherewithal to bring up? Our time is ticking away. We are losing minute by minute. What are we going to do? There are 1,000,001 ways to invite the patient to get out of their stories, to leave the past and the future behind for just a little while and focus all their attention on what is happening in the room and what is not happening in this magical, mysterious space between. I guarantee you, if you are a crier at all, this is the space of tears. Tears of gratitude, tears of joy, tears of grief, tears of sudden recognition and those of shame and frustration. This is the space of true connection, where therapist and patient meet each other with their shields tentatively down and their eyes and ears and hearts wide open. And what could be better than that? One of my favorite challenges is to see a new patient who is on a long list of psychiatric meds, say 6 or 8 or 10 or even more. I love the process of building the necessary trust and cooperation to start the often painful process of tapering off meds. I love trying to figure out what's doing what, which of any of the meds are actually moving the needle in a positive way, and which were added out of frustration or desperation or even just so that the doc or the NP or the PA could feel like they were doing something, managing meds, being a quote-unquote prescriber. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. As I mentioned before, I don't even use the vast majority of psych meds, as I think they're too unsafe and or only marginally effective and or ridiculously expensive Me Too knockoffs. When I released the 10 best psych meds episode last year, my goal was to convince you that we really only need 10 or maybe a few more meds to practice effective and safe psychiatry. And I still stand by that today. In this vein, I thought it might be interesting for you all to hear the medication lists of some of my most difficult to treat patients. So let me start with 3 of my folks with severe bipolar 1 disorder, manic depression. Okay. Patient 1 takes clozapine, methylphenidate, and that's to help with morning sedation and brain fog, and lamotrigine. Patient number 2 takes lithium, lamotrigine, quetiapine. The third, lithium and lamotrigine. And all 3 of these folks have found great benefit from occasional ketamine infusions when they have had breakthrough depressive symptoms. Next group is what we psychiatrists call treatment-resistant depression, TRD, which in my mind is a wastebasket term for a mashup of hard-to-treat anxiety-fueled depression and bipolar spectrum depression, but without frank manic or hypomanic symptoms. Patient 1 of this treatment-resistant depression group is on aripiprazole, escitalopram, quetiapine, lamotrigine. Patient 2, lamotrigine, escitalopram, clonidine. Patient 3 is on lamotrigine and escitalopram. Again, all 3 have had very positive results with intermittent ketamine. So now let's shift to schizoaffective bipolar type, which is basically bipolar 1 with chronic psychotic symptoms. My first patient is on aripiprazole, buprenorphine, mirtazapine, and memantine for OCD symptoms. Second patient, olanzapine, methylphenidate, and metformin to counteract weight gain. Patient 3 is on monthly aripiprazole injection, lithium, and lamotrigine. And yes, all 3 have had major benefit from as-needed ketamine treatments. Here are 3 of my patients with severe treatment-resistant schizophrenia. Patient 1, clozapine, paliperidone injection, metformin, methylphenidate. Patient 2, paliperidone monthly injection. Patient 3, clozapine. And no ketamine for these folks. 2 of my patients with very severe OCD, patient 1 is on escitalopram 40 milligrams. That's a high dose, but folks with OCD need to be on high dose SSRI. Patient 2, surprise, surprise, escitalopram 40 plus lamotrigine. 2 of my patients with very difficult to treat complex developmental PTSD. First one is on ketamine, infusions as needed, propranolol, clonidine. Second patient, ketamine infusions as needed, escitalopram, and trazodone. I wonder if you're hearing a theme here. Most everyone on this list, and these are some of my most treatment-resistant patients, most everyone takes no more than 3 psych meds, and often fewer. And this is typical of my most difficult-to-treat patients. They don't need to be on very many meds because these meds are often so effective, and they typically don't cause side effects that call for other meds, and patients stick with them. And, surprise, surprise, they mostly all made last year's top 10 list. I love the word parsimonious. It means frugal, stingy, focusing on unifying explanations for complex phenomena, looking for ways to bring things together rather than parse them apart. And I'll tell you what is the farthest thing from being parsimonious, and that would be psychiatry's DSM, our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. The DSM-5, our most recent version, has 297 different psychiatric diagnoses. 297. That's crazy train. I think this is not only absurd and nonsensical, it does not represent the way patients present in our offices, nor does it represent the reality of the complex overlapping and co-regulating systems of the brain. The mood, sleep, cognitive, energy, arousal, anxiety, sensory, and meaning-making circuitry of the brain, they tend to decompensate together in just a few common syndromes. And these purported 297 diagnoses can easily cluster into a much more manageable, nosologically sensible, and clinically meaningful shortlist. Thinking about psychiatric diagnosis in a parsimonious manner also allows you to spend a lot less time thinking about which of the 297 diagnoses the patient might have, and a lot more time trying to understand who the patient is, their unique story and personality, their gifts and challenges, and which existential issues might be most relevant in the work together. So, here are most all of the psychiatric diagnoses that I use in my charting. And that said, I think it's probably much more accurate to think of each of these as a syndrome rather than a specific diagnosis. All right, here's my list. Depression, bipolar disorder, OCD, eating disorder, substance use disorder, autism spectrum disorder, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, and ADD/executive functioning disorder. That's 11 diagnoses, or more accurately, 11 syndromes. Maybe I missed a few, but still, that's pretty good. Now, I'm only seeing 11 out of 297, or 3.7% of the range of psychiatric illnesses. Somehow I doubt that. I think that by conceptualizing patients as usually fitting into one of a small number of fairly broad psychiatric syndromal tents, I think I can more quickly get to work knowing that patient as an individual and co-creating a treatment that is specific to who they are and what they most need. And how many people that we see don't even actually have one of these 297 diagnoses? What they have is despair or demoralization or alienation or loneliness. And what's the diagnostic code for that? So often in psychiatry, what we think of as the problem is actually a symptom. Social anxiety, binge eating, substance abuse, agoraphobia, insomnia, and perhaps most interestingly, suicidality. All of these are typically symptoms, but symptoms of what? That's where things start to get interesting. But what is suicidality a symptom of? Depression? Maybe, possibly, sometimes. But even calling suicidality a symptom of depression is a deeply uncurious way of thinking about suicidality. As clinicians, when we are presented with the frightening reality of suicidality, we often jump right into a barrage of questions. Do you have a plan? What is the plan? Do you have the means to kill yourself? Can you contract for safety? Side note, I think that is one of the dumbest things we can ask one of our patients. That question is supposedly going to cover your ass medical legally, but realistically, it will do no such thing, and it's not going to help the patient in any meaningful way. We get so worked up by the ominous specter of suicidality that we lose our therapist stance, that calm, patient, loving, and curious way of relating that ideally will help the patient to go below the suicidality to reveal the drivers, the triggers, the fuel for that consuming desire or need to die. What can drive suicidality? So many things. Shame, that's a huge one. Alienation, fear, guilt, anger, vengeance, disconnection, physical pain, hopelessness. This list could go on and on and on. But then what is driving the shame, or the guilt, the anger, the hopelessness? A patient expressing suicidality is like a patient in the ER saying they're in horrific pain. But what is the nature of this pain? What meaning does the patient ascribe to the pain? By trying to patiently and earnestly understand what is driving suicidality, we can help the patient get curious too. What are these suicidal thoughts? What do they mean? Can I learn to look at them as a scientist observer? Can I try to put some distance between myself and these desperate urges to die? And then we also need to step back and recognize that suicidality comes in at least two major genres. Egosyntonic suicidality, meaning the suicidal thoughts are congruent with the patient's other predominant thoughts and feelings, or egodystonic, meaning that the suicidal thoughts are actually in stark contrast to the way the patient has been mostly thinking and feeling. This latter category of egodystonic suicidality is actually quite common and is a classic symptom of a type of OCD called harm OCD. In harm OCD, the intrusive thoughts are not about germs or contamination or evenness or being good with God. The intrusive thoughts are often violent and might involve vivid images and urges to kill oneself. Harm OCD might tell you, throw yourself off the building, stab yourself in the neck with that knife that you're using to cut the tomatoes, jump in front of this moving train. And each of these egodystonic harm OCD thoughts is then accompanied by horror, confusion, fear, distress, which is a signal that the suicidality is incongruent. Egodystonic suicidality is a different beast indeed. It's OCD and needs to be treated appropriately. Again, people, let's be curious, let's connect, let's slow this train down, and let's stop the contracting for safety bullshit. I'm getting more and more people reaching out to me asking about microdosing ketamine. This typically refers to using daily oral ketamine as part of a purported psychiatric treatment. To cut to the chase, I think that microdosing ketamine is a recipe for tolerance, loss of therapeutic efficacy, and possible dependence. As I've explained in a number of previous episodes, ketamine seems to be most effective for treatment-resistant mood disorders and PTSD when it is used intermittently, probably no more than 1 to 2 times a week at most at low dose, and every few weeks to months at higher psychedelic doses. Because the liver so quickly adapts to metabolizing ketamine, using it more than twice weekly leads to rapid loss of subjective and treatment effects, as well as a significant risk of physical and psychological dependence. Unlike MDMA or psilocybin, ketamine can be addictive. It has both alcohol and opioid-like effects, and it has a definite withdrawal syndrome. You might think of microdosing ketamine as like microdosing, maybe tequila. It might go fine, that daily shot or two of tequila, or it might not. But don't kid yourself that this is somehow medicinal. The US does not have enough psychiatrists, and this problem is only going to get worse in the coming years. The annual number of psychiatry residency graduates, just over 2,000, can't come close to meeting the demand. Plus the fact that 60% of practicing psychiatrists in the United States are over 55 further suggests that psychiatrists will be even more scarce in the coming years. I've become increasingly convinced that our best hope for meeting the increasing demand for competent psychiatric care in the US is through psychiatric nurse practitioners. A few years ago, I decided to stop working with third-year medical students and transition to precepting psych NP students, and this has been a wonderful gift. My psych NP students have been so deeply committed and curious and kind and thoughtful and hungry to learn. And I'm sad to say, their baseline training for the most part has been really lacking and even scandalously deficient to my mind. Unlike psychiatric residencies, which have brick and mortar homes and established rotations and assigned supervisors and very clear established curricula. Many of the new generation of psych NP programs are online with no meaningful connection between students and faculty, no established rotations, and no assigned and pre-screened supervisors. And this makes me insane. With many of the online programs, these poor students have to find their own preceptors. Now, good luck with that. Then pay each preceptor thousands of dollars to then watch their preceptor do 10 to 15 minute med checks. How is this allowed? If psych NPs are truly going to step up and serve alongside psychiatrists, then these online programs are going to have to make some major changes. Forcing students to find and essentially bribe community preceptors for needed rotations, this is not leading to excellence. And a final thought here. Who are these community preceptors who are demanding to be paid to have a student shadow them? Medicine has long operated on the apprenticeship model. We learn from our more experienced colleagues, and this is part of the educational contract, part of the professional expectation that our attendings modeled for us so that we can teach the next generation. On a lighter note, to close things out, I thought I'd share with you all my list of 10 things I never hear in my psychiatric practice. Number 1, I'm now getting up in the morning shortly after the sun comes up, and I don't feel any better. Number 2, I'm so sad that I started on this lamotrigine. Number 3, ketamine is really fun. Number 4, weed helps my panic attacks, it helps my mind work better, and it's really getting me to be the person I want to be. Number 5, I've started working out every day and I definitely feel worse. Number 6, telehealth is so much better than seeing you in person, Dr. H. Number 7, I wish we would spend more time talking about my meds. You know, you managing my meds. Number 8, clozapine just didn't work for me. Number 9, my Adderall dose is too high. And finally, number 10, I'm pretty sure I don't have ADD. All right, well, that's a wrap for the solo episode. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks. If you'd like to reach out to Chris or me, you can reach me through my website, craigheacockmd.com. And we love hearing your comments, suggestions, and story ideas.